So, quick, I promise, quick reflection for Tuesday, February 13th, for the readings. So, Jesus is talking about, watch out, guard against the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And the disciples are like, what? Is this because we forgot to bring bread? And Jesus, like, he challenges them, as he challenges us to deeper listening, right? Jesus says, why do you conclude that it's because you have no bread? Do you not yet understand or comprehend? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes and not see, ears and not hear? Like, boom, 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 boom. He asks question after question after question. He already knows the answer, right? But each question is an invitation to deeper humility, to deeper realization of their own poverty, of our own poverty. Like, I can't feed myself wisdom. I can't feed myself the truth. I have to receive it from the Lord. I have to hear it from Him when He speaks it. And they weren't listening to Him. They were listening to just surface level stuff, right? They saw a loaf of bread in front of them and thought, oh, well, that must be what Jesus is talking about. But Jesus is always looking deeper, and He invites us to look deeper. Jesus goes on to say, don't you remember when I broke the loaves that one time and then that other time? um, he, he multiplies in a miraculous way the loaves, right? And He says, how many baskets were left? And they were like, oh, 12. And what about the other time? How many were left? 7. And he challenges them one more time at the end. He says, do you still not understand? Like, clearly He knows where they're at. But He's trying to stir up their hearts. He's trying to get them to understand that they don't understand. And I think that's a grace when we can realize, I don't get it. I don't get it. Lord, you have to teach me. And you have to teach me so much that I don't even realize how much you need to teach me. Like, I don't even know what I don't know. I don't even know what I don't know that I ought to know. Like, our own ignorance um, is so deep that Jesus has to, like, are your hearts not, are they hardened? Like, don't you get it? He's not doing it to chide. He's doing it to wake us up. Um, and I think that we can make a correlation between that gospel passage and the first reading, which is from James, where James is saying, look, anytime you go through temptation and you persevere through it, like, that's a grace. Like, good on you. He uses different words, but he also says no one experiencing temptation should say, "Oh, God is doing this to me." Like, God tempts no one. He says, rather, each person is tempted when lured and enticed by his desire. Then desire conceives and brings forth sin, and when sin reaches maturity, it brings forth death, gives birth to death. The wages of sin is death, as St. Paul said. So, how can we connect these ideas of the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod with what they're talking about in the first reading? Well, I think when Satan is trying to reproduce himself, so to speak, in the children of men, in the children of God, right? He wants to distort the image of God. So what does he do? Well, he implants lies. He spreads the seed of error. He throws his leaven into our hearts. And wherever there are cracks, in the hardened soil of our hearts, that are gasping for fulfillment, for refreshment, for any kind of satisfaction, right? Just imagine like dry, cracked dirt, and it's thirsty. What does that dirt desire? It desires water and it desires sunlight, right? But instead of us turning to the Lord for the sustenance and the nutrition and the grace and the healing that we need, right? He's the gardener of our hearts. Instead of turning to Him, we take that the pain that we experience in our desires and our a lot of times broken desires, right? We will give in to the temptations of the flesh. We'll give in to the temptations of the devil, and we'll give in to to the lies that he spreads, and we let him speak to us, and we let those words sink in and take root, and our desire to I don't know, just to have comfort and to have pleasure, um, that desire, like James says, leads to sin. And when sin reaches maturity, it gives birth to death. Okay? So, what is the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod? Well, in some way, their teaching, but also their example, the spirit that they have, which is not the spirit of Israel. It's not the spirit of sonship. It's not the spirit of faithful obedience and love. It's a spirit of I know how to make bread. I know how to get what I want. I know how to satisfy this desire. I know how to get people to appreciate me or like me. I know how to get people to do what I say. I know how to control people, like Herod. And I think in some ways that the Pharisees can represent, religion gone wrong, right? Or hypocritical religion, or false religion in whatever way, right? As opposed to Jesus coming to bring true religion, true relationship, religion and relationship with God. And Herod, I think, can represent corrupt government. And if you're hearing some laughter, that's my roommate having a good time. Um, but I think Herod can represent corrupt government. And I think a lot of times we can. I think a lot of times we can turn to politics, right? Like, oh, that's where I'm going to find my fulfillment. I'm going to seek answers in the state, and that's how I'm going to I don't know, find meaning. I'm going to transcend myself into pursuing only political stuff. Um, Gosh, and all the things that Herod can represent. It's I think there's a lot there that we could meditate on. Uh, what what is the leaven of the Pharisees? What is the leaven of Herod? But most importantly, like, what is the leaven of those things in my life, right? Or to cut through it, like, what are the temptations I fall for so often, and why is it that I fall for those? Like, what is it that my heart is desiring that I'm not finding fulfillment in the Lord for, but instead I'm letting the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod, I'm letting the leaven of the devil, his temptations, his lies, I'm letting that sink into the dough of my heart, the dirt, the soil. I'm letting that leaven in. And what rises? What does that give birth to? Sin and death and unhappiness, lack of fulfillment. So when Jesus reminds the disciples, do you not know, do you not remember how many baskets were left over during those miracles? 12 and 7. Like, My leaven gives miraculous multiplication, and I come to feed you abundantly. Like your cup will overflow. You know, 12, representative of the 12 tribes of Israel. Like Jesus is the bread from heaven. He's the true manna. And he's the one who comes to super abundantly satisfy the aching hearts of the Israelites, God's chosen people. And the other miracle, 7 baskets of bread were left over. 7 is the biblical number for wholeness, for perfection, for completion. In other words, Jesus is saying, I am the one to perfectly satisfy your heart and the hearts of all the nations. I am what you need. Jesus is basically saying, and I'm so much what you need. I'm that in abundance. So do we still not understand that all the ways that we seek for food and bread that ultimately doesn't satisfy, like our seeking and our disappointment is an indication that we should stop doing that, right? Seek fulfillment in the only one who can make the dough, the soil in our hearts rise to new life and bud forth true life. Uh, so if your heart and my heart are hardened in some way as we're preparing for Lent, maybe we can just ask the Lord, what are you trying to say to me? Lord, I don't understand. But you're a good teacher, and I know you can break through this hardened heart. If the devil is so effective in communicating to my heart and getting me to fall for lies, Jesus, how much more effective must your wisdom be in getting through to me? And I think our stance just needs to be one of total openness and receptivity and say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And then explain it, because I'm kind of hard-hearted and I'm not really getting it. All right. God bless. Peace.